Chairman. Thanks for holding this meeting. Mr. Lenderking, last week I was in Djibouti. We have 140 members of the Wyoming Air National Guard there. They're right there at the tip of activities. It's a hot spot. What we see is happening, with attack on the ships that are training to the point where they can't get through the Suez Canal. They can't get insurance. They're going around around Africa. It's adding about 12 days to the transit time. Concern adding to the costs significantly, the impact of foreign trade. All of these things as a result of the Houthis and what they're doing in that area, aiming at ships, some with drones, sometimes with missiles. It's only about 11 miles that I was there at the point, looking how close things were. So they're in a hot spot. The day I get back, the New York Times has this big expose about the fact that the administration has really fallen down on the job of trying to prevent the sale of Iranian oil to China. They reported 59 million barrels of oil on, they described them as shadowy tankers that left Iran, and all of these have ended up in China. And then the cash from all of this ended up in Iran, and they said at the lowest prices of oil it would be $2.8 billion, but likely much more as prices fluctuate. Secretary of Treasury came to Congress. She testified, this is before that report came out, that, things are fine, that we're doing everything we can. American people don't believe it. The soldiers that are there risking their lives don't believe it, because that's the money that's being used. There was 140 attacks by the Houthis, funded and by Iran, on American soldiers in the last 4 months. We know where the money's coming from. A lot of it's coming from the sale of oil that we should be blocking, or other funds that go from the United States. I think the administration has failed completely. I think the president is just being outworked and outplayed and outmaneuvered by the Iranians. I think the world is seeing a diminished president who's just not up to the job. What are you doing from the standpoint of the State Department to prevent this ongoing effort to sell, for Iran to be able to continue to sell to China? I mean, they're working together, and Iran's also giving drones to Russia. You have North Korea being belligerent as well. It just seems that we are not where we want to be. As a State Department official, what's your response to all this?
Well, thank you, Senator. First of all, for visiting Djibouti. It's not necessarily everybody's first, thought of where to go, but we have important interests there. I've been there 3 times in this particular job, so I'm aware of the details about which you speak, and we do have a very important interdiction and inspection operation for Yemen ships that is based in Djibouti, called the UN Verification and Inspection Mission. But certainly agree with you that the Iranians are not supposed to be able to sell that kind of oil to China. I think there are very vigorous efforts to counter that with our partners and allies, and that kind of funding I think that you are speaking about is in violation of not only U.S. interests but also numerous UN Security Council resolutions.
Yeah, well, and it does seem that it was the New York Times expose that actually brought it to the fore, because the administration seems to be unaware of all of this that was happening out there.
I think the administration, I'm not the Iran expert, Senator, but I think the administration is aware of it and would certainly look into these reports in more depth now that they've been...
If they're aware of it, then they tried to mislead Congress intentionally, because the Secretary of Treasury said we're doing absolutely everything possible, and then all of a sudden this gets showed to the world from a press coverage. So anything you want to add on this? Okay. Well, we can go on and on. The other thing that I saw in Djibouti, and I asked you to comment on this, and you saw as well, China is building a large base there. You can see it from the air coming in. You can see it from the ground. China's making significant investments in that area. Our base in Djibouti was an old French Foreign Legion base, which is why it's named after the commander of the base at the time. But China's making communist China is making significant investments right in that area, where the Gulf of Aden comes down and then goes up into the Red Sea. And from a State Department standpoint, anything that you're noticing with that and we need to be concerned with?
Well, certainly, Senator, I think we are very conscious and aware of Chinese expansion in the Gulf region, which is by and large not in our interests. I think that's very much a part of the engagement that we have with the Chinese and also our partners in the region and in East Asia as well.
Okay. And then to Mr. Shapiro, last month, Qatar Energy decided to suspend all transits through the Red Sea. This led to the shipments being forced, as I talked about, around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, adding significant delays, about a day, probably 12 days added in Israel, much more fuel being expended to move the product around. Same time, Russia, Iran are both building up their LNG export capacity. Europe's energy supply be helped or hurt by President Biden's decision to reduce American LNG exports, actually putting a pause on that, given that the supplies from Qatar are now forced to go around Africa?
Senator, I'm certainly not an expert on energy markets or energy export policies, so I think I'll decline to answer the question.
Well, it's hurting. It's
Sorry?
hurting. I'll just tell you the answer.
Yeah.
It's hurting.
May I address your question about China,
Sure.
if that's all right?
Please.
Because China's been mentioned on a couple of occasions, and I think it's actually quite noteworthy. One of your colleagues mentioned that what's quite clear is that China is playing no role to help with this multilateral international effort to defend legitimate shipping in the international waterways. And it is one of those moments when I think it has become clear to many of our partners in the region, sometimes when people ask questions, are they going to remain committed to the U.S., or they ask, will the U.S. remain committed to the region, or will they have alternative security partners? They do not have an alternative security partner in China. There is nobody other than the United States who will do what we are doing to defend freedom of navigation in this region. And so I actually think it's been a moment of clarity about U.S. influence in this region in this regard.
I don't know if either of you want this question, you comment. What is the administration's strategy to ensure Europe is not forced to turn to Iran and Russia for LNG now that the U.S. is not wanting to export it based on the president's new policy?
I think it's a bit beyond the Defense Department's area of focus.
Well, it's indefensible. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.